We're now delighted to be joined on the telephone by Dr. Yumna Al-Hamaidi, Professor of Economics. Apologies. Actually, no, we have Dr. Sahar Damaty, the economic expert. Dr. Sahar, very good afternoon to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us. Doctor, first and foremost, what are the objectives, in your opinion, of the economic conference, which is to kick off tomorrow?
I think the objectives are around 3 or 4 points, the first of which is to look at all the problems related to the current economic sectors, whether we're talking industrialization, trade, agriculture, and so on, in order to find out what are the problems, suggest the solutions, discuss this with the government, come up with proper solutions for each different economic sector,
Yes,
and monitor to make sure that all the problems are resolved, accordingly enabling the private sector to be a strong component and a strong partner in the economic development of the country. That's number one. Number two, it's around the macroeconomic problems. And talking about macroeconomic problems, we're talking about inflation, we're talking about proper currency discipline or system, talking also about putting the proper solutions and measures for the low-income bracket people in order to enable them to survive through this terrible economic crisis. I'm calling it actually an economic war rather than an economic problem. So this around the macro component. Similarly, with regard to the fiscal government and whatever they can do in order to increase or decrease the deficit between the revenues and expenditures, and accordingly strengthen the budget of the country.
Absolutely. Dr. Sahar, now, as you mentioned it, the economic crisis or the economic war, what is the importance of holding such a conference, especially now, at this stage of the global economic tension?
This is a very important stage at the time being because, as you can see, the inflation is very high, not only in Egypt, by the way, it's across the world. Similarly, when it comes to the devaluation of the currency at this point in time, and this feeds into the inflation for more and more, by the way. Thirdly, to cope with the problems related to the goods that needs to be imported and freed from the different ports. So all of these issues together, the implication of the war, the difficulty of determining whenever this war is going to end, all of these issues are important at this point in time to revisit the strategy of the government and to determine the path that we have to follow over the short, medium, and long term, and put proper cure for the economy and restructure whatever is needed to be restructured in order to move the country forward economically.
Right, indeed. Doctor, let's talk a bit about, the most important groups and delegations that would be participating in this conference.
I think it's from both sides. From the private sector, I think you're going to see most of the private sector, private sector companies represented in the conference, as well as the government, the counterpart from the government, of course, whether we're talking agriculture, trade, industrialization, and so on and so forth, all the ministers, the governor of the central bank, and also I believe they will be inviting a number of experts, economic experts, in order to give their advice regarding solutions that could be implemented over the next period of time.
Indeed. Right, Doctor, of course, this conference is just being held a few days before the beginning of the COP27, the climate conference, to be held later on in November at the Red Sea Resort City of Sharm el-Sheikh. How do you see the role of the economy when it comes to combating issues related to climate change?
It's very important because you're talking right now about moving from the normal economy, which is depending on fuel, on coal, and so on, that is very unclimate friendly, and to move towards different sectors that are, or different fields that are actually combating the climate issues right now. We've witnessed over the last period of time, a number of fires, problem related to the climate, and if you're not going to deal with them right now or during this period of time, although there has been some more than 26 different conferences in this regard, but this time you really need to put the proper channels to follow and the budget that needs to be put in place in order to cure the problem related to the climate.
Absolutely right. I'd like to thank you very, very much, Dr. Sahar Damaty, our economic expert. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your time and your insight. And ladies and gentlemen, a short break, and we'll be back for more on this edition of Cairo Local Time. Do stay tuned.